So we started the journey probably 4.5, 5 years ago, initially by a question raised by our chair at the time, Dame Jenny Shipley, as to whether we were paying our women fairly. So we dug into it. You start with the median to median across your whole organization, but then you go, hang on a minute, you've got to go layers deeper in order to really understand the issue. And eventually you get down to comparing like-for-like roles. It's not really complex, but it's interesting and it does require data analytics. So I think having the skill set to do it is really important because you have to make decisions about where you compare roles. Is it through some form of banding, some sort of job type, some form of job description? And you get different answers depending on how you look at it. So we looked at it in lots of different ways. At that point, we weren't disclosing anything publicly. We never hesitated to disclose. What's interesting when you do that as well is it's more complex than people realize at first. You can't just say, okay, we've got a gap, now let's close it, bang. Because you could be comparing a woman who's been working for 1 year in the company who's had an okay but average performance appraisal to a man who's been working in the same role for 5 to 10 years who's had excellent performance appraisals. If you just equalize immediately, you're disincentivizing performance and disincentivizing progression in the company. So there's many layers here, not just are they doing similar roles, but what's their experience and how are they performing. So we have sort of 3 actions we take every 6 months. Some of them are immediate changes. Some of them are watch and see, and some of them are communicated to employees saying, we believe a change may be required, but we're going to see how you perform over the next year before we make it. So we keep the incentive to perform, and that's really important too. So the disclosure, as I said, happened probably about 3 years ago. We just felt it was the right thing to do. And the main reason was when you look at Genesis's total gap on a median to median basis, it's quite high. It was sitting in the low 40s, it's now 35%. But when you look at our equity gap, it's quite low, about 1.5%. And what's really interesting is to discuss what's the difference between those two numbers. One, it's about understanding, are we being fair? Are we being equitable? Not necessarily is everyone equal. It's also part of our employee value proposition. So reporting it ensures that employees see we take it seriously. If they haven't had a tap on the shoulder to be told that there's a pay adjustment coming for pay gap reasons, they at least know that they must be paid fairly and Genesis is across it. So we kind of have their back, if you like. There are 3 layers for us. There's the equity layer. We're reasonably in control of that. The next layer is about hierarchical progression into more senior leadership roles. We create development opportunities sideways as well as up. We've got an example now where I've just appointed a female executive into our chief operation officer's roles. 2.5 years ago, she was moved out of the operations area into the retail business to develop her leadership skills. Because she performed and delivered and learned a lot in a completely different part of the business, she's now much more capable to be that executive. So we're working hard. We've got about 45% women in the senior leader roles across the business, but that doesn't mean there isn't still more to do. And certainly in the lower level of leadership, it's a really important area of focus. So as we move more people up, that's going to close our total gap. Then we get to the really hard bit, which is often called occupational segregation, but it really amounts to we have different people choosing different careers. We have quite a differential between male and females choosing those roles. We've got a lot of women in our contact center, and we've got a lot of men who are engineers and operators. Tenure in the contact center is roughly about, say, 5 years on average, whereas we've got men who are technically qualified who've been working for 30, 40, 50 years. That's why we have a really big median to median gap. And that's partly why we disclose it, because we want to have a conversation, not just amongst ourselves within Genesis, but with other companies in our sector and other sectors to make sure that we're solving that problem, which is going to take a generation to fix, to be honest. The expectation that every single company is in control of this is not a fair one. We're hiring the gap sometimes as well. We really struggle to get female engineers. And so we've got to solve that problem. We need to work with government as well. It's not just a private sector thing. Otherwise, in the end, what we're doing is we're poaching people to fix the gap in a false sense, but we're bobbing for Peter to pay Paul is the expression that comes to mind. Get on with it and report it. It's not scary. No one's given Genesis a hard time for having a big gender gap in total, because they can see that we're addressing it and we're dealing in pay equity, we're in good shape. And it's only when everyone starts reporting it that we can have a real conversation about it. So I've not known any customers to leave us because of it. I've not known any employees to leave us because of it. If anything, reporting it, being transparent and open about the challenges gives people confidence that we're a company that's worth working for and being a customer of. And I think that's in everyone's interest all over the market.